Okay, so my recent trip to the Otteson mine to try to find Variscite and possibly turquoise. Thought I would document this as a narrative in a video, so here goes. Apologize for any imperfections the mic might pick up, doing my best. This is what it looks like on I-95 North, pretty much the whole way. It's been labeled by some as the loneliest highway in the United States. There was a interesting cinder cone that I passed little ways in. Looks like it's being torn down for industrial uses, possibly landscaping rock, who knows. But the cinder cone is large. A little further on there's a sand dune. Sand dunes are not unusual in the desert, but they're unusual in this location. There isn't one for another, I don't know, 25 miles from here. It's called Big Dune. This little structure over here is actually a small hill that's been torn down. It's in the town called Rhyolite. Rhyolite is a ghost town, used to be a mining town, and I ran up there once to look at this place, hoping to find banded rhyolite. I could not find any of it, but the banded rhyolite is probably not mined any longer. This is what some of the buildings look like, and this was the Commerce building, or the Bank and Commerce building. I think this was a hotel. Very interesting leftovers and remnants from a once thriving town just outside Beatty, Nevada. And here's an artist's rendition of The Last Supper, I believe. It's a very haunting looking thing that's out there. That's rhyolite. And as you travel further, you start to see some interesting things, more interesting landscaping. This is, besides the interesting hill in the back, this is a fireworks depot, which is attached to the Area 51 Alien Center. The Alien Center turns out to be the launching pad for the most recent strike or raid on Area 51. Not well known by most outside the area. This also has the distinction of carrying its own brothel. So it turns out I'll end up driving by several brothels on the way up. Managed to capture a couple of them, but I guess the aliens have their own brothel too. You go a little further, you can see that the Angel's Ladies Brothel, which has its own airplane. Imagine someone did a crash landing trying to get there real quick. It turns out to be some trailer homes that are over here. Nothing fancy. Angel's Ladies. As you go further on and on, you see the hills start to take on more of a tricolor, kind of a late Triassic look to them. I'm not a geologist. I haven't studied, but this looks like rock I wouldn't mind walking around and seeing if there's anything interesting over there. Whenever I see rock like this, typically there's gemstones to be found or something. Anyway, another 75 miles later, we find ourselves in the town of Goldfield. Goldfield is pretty much a living gold field. There are fields adjacent to Goldfield, a town called Gemfield. But Goldfield is just marked with mines, and there's head frames all over and mines all over. It's a very interesting town on its own. People are characters here in this town, and all you have to do is walk out your back door and you probably might find some stuff. The ground seems to be very full of rock. Here's what some of the houses look like in Goldfield. This one's quite interesting. Quite of a collection here, I imagine. He's been putting this together for years. There's other oddities in this town, such as railway collections, such as rail cars and even a train. Who knows? This small train may have been used to pull ore out of mines here in town. Don't know. Another 75 miles later, we find ourselves in Tonopah. Tonopah, Nevada is 60 miles southeast of where we're going to do our mining today. And Tonopah is a very, very interesting town on its own. It's also rich in mining history. And as I drove around town, it became apparent to me that Tonopah is almost a living mine. I mean, the hills surrounding Tonopah, Tonopah is at about 4,900 feet, maybe even 5,900, I forget. But the ground has just been excavated everywhere. It's really, really a live mining town. A lot of this stuff looks like it's active. There are a couple of really interesting mining museums in Tonopah, one of which I got to drive by, but I wasn't able to take the tour as it was closed when I went there. But Central Nevada Museum has many interesting Tonopah things, such as the original structures for town. Some of these structures, an example of a head frame, and lots of different ancient mining equipment. Again, these structures right here were part of the original mining town. This is central Tonopah, and I imagine that some of the early mines were not very far from here. But I thought it would be interesting just to drive us through it. I really can't tell you what most of this stuff is. I can take an educated guess, but looks like a stagecoach there. But I thought it would be interesting to get a small look at the museum, even though they were closed. I had planned on taking the tour. This looks like the kind of thing that they would put drunks in for the night if they were unruly. I've seen these types of apparatuses before, or maybe hall prisoners, whatnot. Doesn't look like an ore cart. And then, of course, you have a lot of these bomb-looking implements laying around. I don't know if those are propane tanks or bombs, but they look like Maverick bombs to me. We have a prop. We have an old engine, looks like. Um, Looks like an early dozer right here, or a backhoe, an early backhoe, maybe a steam backhoe. This is very interesting here. I've never seen anything like this. Maybe it's the first Caterpillar or John Deere. And we have a trailer, a spooling mechanism, perhaps for the mine. And here's what we looks to be as like an early dozer, maybe a steam dozer. I've never seen anything like this before. I can only imagine what it must have been like driving that. Again, here's some of the old early homes, buildings, possibly a post office. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to take the tour, but it would have been interesting. This looks like another steam motivated set of wheels there, and maybe a turbine, and maybe this is the cable that lifts things in and out of the mine. And we've got another interesting thing here. Pops, this lifts and brings cars or vertical loads of things into the mine. I've never seen anything like that before. More spools, and this is an interesting machine. This looks like an early motor or an engine. Maybe this is what drove or powered the big wheels that raised and lowered things into mines. I can only imagine, but this is interesting. I've never seen anything quite like that. And again, we have some more wheels and spools and different types of implements for mining. Maybe a mining car. Very interesting. Town itself, this is the center of town, and you can see head frames and old mining buildings and fields of tailing and excavations right here in the middle of town. Um, these look to be active. I don't know. One of them, I believe, is a museum. The head frame for this one appears to actually be something in use. The land is gated off, almost as if it's in use. And this is the Mizpah Hotel. It's two buildings really. It's really restored well. It's an old building. I guess it says 1865. I don't know if that's 1965. But the Pittman Cafe, where I had dinner, is a good place to pick up some food. Just going inside, excuse me, going inside the hotel is a step back in history. I've got some photos from the insides. Perhaps I put them in this video. There's a good steak that can be had at this hotel. There's my steak and potatoes. And here's what it looks like after 20 minutes. And that's what it finished up looking like. This is right outside the restaurant. You can plainly see this is a door to a vault. And this is a very heavy door. And this is a gift shop inside here with a few bits of memorabilia also. But the door itself is quite an exhibit. It's right outside the bar and right outside the restaurant. Again, I guess this is an area where they could have allowed people to go in and out easily without having to open the big door. But this is probably one of the main vaults in town. I can only imagine. I don't know if a hotel needs a vault, but this is quite interesting on its own. It's got plexiglass on it, and you can take a look at the innards of the vault. So the next morning, very, very early, I set off with 18 or 20 other vehicles to the mine site. This is the Otteson, one of their 65 claims. Ottesons are known for Royston, Turquoise, and as you can see, the hills are pretty much ripe with possibilities. Everywhere you look, there's telltale signs of possible rocks to be found. Turns out that this scrape right here is where we're going to be doing our mining today. It has been part of a hillside taken down, and you'll see a better look at that. The road gets a little worse, but it's nothing that little high clearance vehicle can't handle. Going up this incline is not that bad. We've only been driving for about 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 miles off-road. Once we get to the destination, the views, panoramic view, is quite interesting. It's got surrounding hills again. Boy, I can imagine what it must be like to walk in these hills looking for rocks and gemstones. The ground that we're parked on is really choppy rock, and I didn't get this on film, but I managed to. I picked up some decomposed quartz not far from the car, which leads me to believe that perhaps gold in this area. Who knows? This is the hillside we're going to be working. It once looked like this, but someone found Variscite or turquoise. Someone today would find azurite, not much. And I don't believe that much or any turquoise was found from this site. Mostly this was Variscite. And essentially they bring in a backhoe or something, they tear this down, and then they go through the tailings, they pull out all the valuable rock, do the Ottesons, and then they will lease this for several hours or for a full day to people that are interested in going through the tailings looking for gemstones and rocks, which is what we're here for today. There's about 18 of us, and we're a little spread out here, but this is the site. Mostly dirt clods, small rocks. And this right here is sort of a sheer wall. They wanted us to stay away from the sheer wall, which is where all the ore comes from, all the raw materials come from here. But they didn't want, for safety reasons, they didn't want anybody near this wall because it could collapse on you, maybe unstable. So we all steered clear of that. Once you get down into this, here's my spot where I happen to be standing for the morning session. You can pretty much use whatever digging implements you decide to bring with you to get through this loose dirt. It's mostly all loose or compacted dirt, and everyone's got their own little spot and their own way of getting rocks out of the ground, basically. And it's a lot of fun. I have to say it's a lot of fun. At least there's some excitement because Mr. Otteson, David Otteson, was out there in the morning. He actually handed me a rock that he picked up early on. He stayed with us for about 5 or 10 minutes before leaving. He's an older gentleman, and he pointed some girls, the girls who were next to me, pointed out to them where they should be looking. And the tailings pile, I guess he had left some really good stuff in one location. The girls found all of that and did rather well for themselves. I had less luck. I dug for 4 to 5 hours, and typically this is what it looks like. You've got some green vein going through, and since this has all been pulled off the hill, there is no contiguous or continuous vein that you can follow here. This has all been pulled down off of the hill and dumped on the side. So it's been sitting for a while, but it's easy to get through if you have a little rake or shovels or other digging implements. This one's going to go into the bag, even though it's not that great. I got a chance to use a couple of my new tools. I brought knee pads, which was a real bonus. It would have been difficult without them. So about halfway through, I'm looking at some of the rocks that I pulled out of there just to see if there's anything. Most of the stuff that I found is lighter green. You can see lighter greens. Not much of the darker stuff that I really want. I really wanted a darker green. It's been called Variscite. I can't say that it is. I can't say that it isn't. I don't think this is turquoise that I'm looking at. Turquoise I always associate with blue. This is more of a green. It's green all the way, actually. This is the poorer quality of the lighter stuff, and you can get into some darker stuff too, like this, perhaps this chunk. But this is also not that great because you get these little thin veins that are tracing their way through the rock. The host rock is in some case harder like this, and in some case it's lighter and crumbly like in the prior example. I found that the harder the rock or the yellower the stone in the host matrix, the darker the green was in the Variscite. So this is an example where it's kind of a yellow hardish host matrix and the Variscite is darker green. So unfortunately you can't really look for that and trace that and follow it like a vein. You could if you were able to mine on that cliff face that we were looking at earlier, but that wasn't the case. So just wanted to take another view from the top of the hill before leaving. It's kind of a there are mines all over the place as I pan. Some of them can be seen, some not, but it's quite pretty up here. There's a little elevation here, and you can see for quite some ways. It's very I think Highway 8993 is right back over there. It's way far far in the distance, about 7 or 8 miles from where we're at. And there's our pile. And on the way out, I noticed some old structures, which probably were maybe one of the original mines. There's a open pit, or maybe an air shaft or something here. They always barb wire it off when it's something that's dangerous, so who knows. And then in the distance you can see there's a couple of vehicles out here, and this is being actively mined. There's active work being done all over. So when I get back home, this is dry. This is kind of the tray that I think might have a few stones in it. Again, not a lot of really great stuff, but some of the pieces like this or this, some of them are large. And here's a light colored chunk, which is nice. But at this point, I'm really not sure what I have. I need to get the material to a saw before I can be sure. This turns out to be very muddled. The host matrix is very soft, and something like this might need to be stabilized. Matter of fact, I thought I was going to have to stabilize everything, but I got some of this rock on the grinder today, and it turns out to be a lot more solid. It's more like a 6 on the Mohs scale, 5 or a 6. It's a little harder. This is a nice piece. This piece almost looks solid. If it is, that I'm kind of in luck, because I think I can get some little cabs off of this, some little necklet or bracelet cabs. But we'll see. We'll see if anything comes of this one. But just going through some of the little things that I found. Others, a couple others did better, and many did worse. I dug for 5 hours. I dug hard. It was a lot of hard work, and we paid $100 a head to farm on the Otteson's tailings, or their leftovers. You can see the color goes all the way through on this one, from one side to the other. It's just not a very good color. It's a poor, very, very light lime green. I was looking for darker stuff, and so not really sure what we have, but I would say that my disappointment level is a little higher than I thought it would be. My expectations were a little greater. I found no turquoise. At least I don't believe there's any turquoise. And maybe a poor form of Variscite. A lot of this veins, the veins don't typically get any thicker than this in general, and it's hard getting a gemstone out of that. As a matter of fact, this looks a lot like chalk to me. This may end up producing nothing. So stuff that I thought was real good when I left the mine, who knows? Maybe I can get this on a saw and take a 90-degree cut and see how good the rock is here. Again, I have to really cut this rock before I make a judgment on whether it was a complete loss. I spent $125 in gas getting up there, and $100 on the lodging, and $100 for my seat on the bus. So here's another couple pieces we got. This is called a clamshell. At least David called this a clamshell because it has the shape of a clam, and the outsides here and here typically tend to be a layer of the rock, the Variscite. So let's see, clamshell. I have a number of clamshells in this bucket. This is a typical 5-gallon bucket. That's garbage. There's another clam. Who knows, once I get into this, who knows if there's anything in here, if any kind of relative thickness or green that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a darker green, hoping. This looks like pure garbage right here. Maybe if I slice it and stabilize it, Maybe I can get some interesting patterning out of this. I'm not expecting much. I was thinking it was better even when I was mining this stuff, but again, this piece here looks to be garbage. But once I got it home and washed it off, I realized that I had a lot of stuff which was just paint on the rock or peripheral gemstone, or not really the good stuff. So this one has potential. There's a nice thick dark green slab which is half of the clamshell on this one. So I think I've got some hope. I've got some hope, that this might be a solid piece, and if it is, that pays for my trip. So that pretty much wraps up where I landed yesterday. Today I decided to get on the grinder and see what I really had here. So I spent about 5 hours on the grinder, maybe 6 hours on the grinder today, and I can show you what I came up with. There. So here's what I got out of 5 or 6 hours of trying to render this green rock, get the bad junk rock off of it. These colors are washed. They're a little greener than they appear in this picture. I've got bad light, but in general you can see the lighter pieces are light. Some of them are a little more solid. Some of them have a lot of matrix in it. Some are darker in shade. Most all are not really good examples. Solid samples. Maybe this one's a good one. Here's a solid sample. Here's a pure white sample. I'm gonna have to cut that in half and maybe make something from that white. Here's a better piece with maybe one flaw in it, but I can do something with this for sure. That'll be pretty. Here's a darker piece which has all kinds of real bad matrix riddled through it, and another lighter piece which in my opinion has some resemblance to a turquoise. Turquoise sort of gets a look like this sometimes, and so does this. So in some cases it had some similarity to turquoise, but I don't believe this is turquoise. And the smaller pieces I can probably put some holes in and make a little bracelet or necklaces or something. I can do something with the little guys. This piece here is very turquoise looking in my opinion. It's got some splotchy, I don't know if you call this variegated. I don't know what you would call this, but I've seen some turquoise that takes on a similar look. But that's light green, and I can make something with that piece right there too after I take it down some. And here's another one which also has some kind of matrix riddled through it. It's not a terribly ugly stone. I gotta grind it down, do a little more finishing on this one, but I think I might have something there with some of that. Who knows? And again, some of the darker stuff was just too much matrix in it, really. I like this stuff here because this reminds me of some stuff I found outside a copper mine. Remember, I found decomposed quartz on the ground not 100 feet from the site where we were mining, and this has the look of some of the stuff that I saw, the staining that I saw outside some copper mines and some chrysocolla stained rock in Nevada and Arizona mines. That's what this reminds me of. And that made me want to look at something. I'll get back to that in a bit. But I have some bigger rocks. I have bigger pieces. Um, as I mentioned earlier, this one here, it looks to be solid. If it is, I'll be happy. And this will make me very happy if I can get some dark green, slices on this. I could perhaps cab out 8 or 10 nice little pendants with that. Some nice pieces in there. Hopefully it's not too mottled with the matrix. If it is, then I'll cry. And we'll look at that later. Get it to the saw. Luckily, I got a thin saw blade. I've got one of those hot dog blades, which doesn't take a lot of the material away. I had some other pieces that I threw on the grinder just to see how decent they were. Here's a lighter blue, bluish green. Again, it's not high quality. It's a large piece. I'll be able to do something with it. I'll probably have to stabilize it. It's not coming apart as I'm taking it down though. Most of this stuff was very well held together. Even stuff that looked like it was crumbling and falling apart was not. I really only had 1 or 2 very small pieces fall apart on me today, where a piece broke off that I was grinding down. Most of it held very well. So the hardness level was just a bit harder than the stuff I found outside the copper mine, which is kind of made me want to look. So I went and grabbed some rocks that I tumbled outside the Arizona. I picked up outside the Arizona and Nevada copper mines. And here's what they look like. As you can see, we've got some greens in here, we got some lighter colors, and it has similar characteristics to what I found. It makes me feel not so bad about these little greenish rocks that I got outside the copper mine. You can see some of the staining here. Pretty typical of copper staining, and not too far off what I picked up. You can see here's some more green. I've got even greener versions of this rock that I've made in Dependence already, or have in other places where I might have set aside some little stones for some project. But these are nice because they're more of a solid green. I'm pretty happy with that. This is a very light, creamy mint lime green, but I was hoping for more of a dark green, to be honest with you. But all in all, a few hours of work. I don't feel terribly bad about those. I just rendered them out rather quick. Wasn't trying to make anything. Although I did make a couple of small finished products that I think I can turn into pendants. This one's a lighter, almost a very light green. I can make something out of that. Make a pendant out of that. I gotta polish it though. It's not really polished. And then there's another one here which is a little darker. Again, these were some of the early pieces I just pulled off the pile and decided to see if I could make something out of them, so I put them on the grinder. Let me dry this off. These need to be polished a little better, but this piece isn't so bad for a pendant. It's kind of a cute little piece. Nice colors to it. Not so bad. So I've got a couple that I've worked out. So time spent today. I had fun just to see what. I was really antsy though. I was really antsy after getting the rocks home to see what I had. Again, here's another look at a rock what I consider to be one of the better rocks that I have. Has a very turquoise nature to it with the matrix. Little darker greens in here, a little mottled, a little bit light green, dark green, which I kind of like. I haven't ground this down to see if it's solid, but these are at least 3/4 of an inch thick, and might amount to something. This piece might amount to something because the green goes right through, and so who knows? Who knows? I might be able to make something out of this. Who knows how far this goes down? I don't imagine that it's solid, but this piece right here, that's, you know, nearly an inch thick, and who knows? I might be able to create something from that. And if I can, then I'll be happy. You know, if I went up there and didn't pay $100 to Mr. Otteson to farm on his property, I would have been very happy with these stones, bringing them home. But I really think what it was more than anything else was the money. You know, I just really don't like paying for rocks, or I don't like buying rocks, but this was at least, you know, I had to work hard. I worked for 5 hours to pull this stuff out of the ground, and so I did my part. But I guess at the end, maybe perhaps the idea of buying rocks doesn't exactly sit well with me. But who knows? I'll do an update on this once I get some of these to the saw. Who knows? Maybe I got something good here. I'm pretty happy with this stuff, but I expected better. I think I've made that clear. My expectations were too high going into this. Watching a couple of the Royston Otteson videos on YouTube and getting all excited about the possibility of finding turquoise. None of us found turquoise. None of us. Not one of the 20 of us found turquoise at that dig. And one person found a small piece of azurite, which was pretty, you know, the darker blue. But I think this is, I was told this is Variscite. I don't have any experience to tell you if that's right or wrong. But anyway, I thought I would share my day and my mining trip and do it as a narration. Hopefully this worked. Again, thanks for your time, and thanks for stopping by to have a look.